Good evening, dear friends. Good evening to those who are with us today. Good evening, Pavel Mikhailovich.
Good evening, everyone, colleagues.
Today, our meeting is dedicated to the history of the method. Today, the meeting is part of the series Questions to the Author. It is probably no secret to anyone, but for those who don't know, I will explain. This time we have a jubilee. This year we will celebrate the 10th anniversary of the creation of the neurography method. And of course, many questions always arise, such as how the method was created, how it all happened, and how it developed. Naturally, who can we ask these questions to, if not the author of the method? Pavel Mikhailovich, thank you very much for agreeing to meet with us today and answer our questions.
What is the question? How did the method come about?
I'll start right away. The most frequently asked question of how did it come about? Despite the fact that we have many articles and a lot has been written on the website, the question still arises. So how did the method come about?
Look, this question has been asked of me for 10 years. In this sense, the answer changes because on one hand, the number of times I answer this question makes me reflect each time on how it came about. On the other hand, so much has happened in these 10 years that the emergence of the method for a person who is encountering it today is not the same as when I discovered the word neurography for myself and for all of us on April 29th, 2014. That is, the first period, if we talk about it, is a preparatory and a cumulative one, as it always is. The first phase of any endeavor is the accumulation of information. Well, let's say that my entire life before neurography was an accumulation of information. This has been the study of art since the very earliest childhood and throughout life, in fact, up to the present. And the art of graphics, the art of drawing, painting, just art, visual art above all, theater art. Secondly, and in this sense it is, well, a kind of understanding not only of the laws of beauty, but also of methods, techniques, history, movements, and beauty. Of course, all of this is not something that can be studied in a year or even 5 at the faculty. It is some kind of endless life in art, that's one thing. On the other hand, since I am a child of theatrical origin, the first public place I was taken to after the maternity hospital was the theater stage. My father carried me there in his arms. They say that I didn't even shout, I just looked at the empty theater. And in this sense, the theater is indeed psychology. In this sense, my life is a constant work with images, with people, with psychology, as well as relocations and tours. So I am currently talking about childhood, and then there is one higher education institution, then another, and a third, architecture, and the art and graphic design faculty. In this sense, on one hand, it is artistic education, and on the other hand, it is a constant life among people. And I am like this. I am a people person and I enjoy it. And, well, by the time the word appeared, I was already a candidate of psychological sciences. And by that time, I think I had been engaged in psychological practice for almost 25 years and only that, nothing more. In this sense, I have always been interested in two things in life, people and, accordingly, psychology and art. And so it happened that when the day I mentioned arrived, this word was born, encompassing both aspects, because the word graphics generally refers to, I don't know, the most classic, the most aristocratic form of visual art, simply put, a line. The word graphics refers to lines and spots, and then there are colors which are all, so to speak, artistic excesses. Everything initially starts with a line, and the word graphics pertains to that. The word neuro relates to a person, to the brain, to perception, to impression. Thus, in this word, two of my educational lines converged, not only in educational institutions, but in the broader sense of the word educational, in life. And from here, everything that followed unfolded. Then there was the second phase accordingly. This is the phase of the formation of the method. And this is probably true for the first 3 to 4 years, when initially you develop this line, and then write down some 10 basic principles. You know, it's curious, for example, Newton. Well, we all know Newton as a great philosopher and a great physicist. He wrote all of his physics in one summer. It is known that there was some kind of epidemic in England, and he went to his grandmother's house and spent the whole summer in the garden looking at the stars, sitting under the famous apple tree, and somehow he recorded all of his physics in that one summer. Here is neurography. From the perspective of recording, it was born in one summer for me as well in 2014. And I conducted the first training literally the day after. The word came, Here it is, the first big training, a large training that lasted several days, which I conducted a month after the word was born. However, it took about 3 years for the writing part to come together, and in the third year, the first instructor course appeared. I mean something significant because the very first instructor course in 2016 was born when the method was 2 years old, and it served as the foundation for the method to start breaking down into these modules, parts, meaning it began to form as an educational system. Until then, it was about oneself, for oneself, an exploration of the application of this very line in one's personal life. There were very surprising results, as well as some initial publications on social media. Well, people just came to me and started saying, listen, teach me. And when the request teach me arises, it leads to a more academic, I would say, educational question. It is necessary to formulate a method of transmission. And it can be said that the second stage was from 2014 to 2017. This was the formation of transmission methods. And now I think that the third stage is coming to an end. This is when the transmission became multiple, and in general, I would even say probably not ideal, but very good. And there are a lot of experiments, because each drawing is an experiment. And there is a lot of feedback, as well as a scientific school, dissertations, and instructors. Moreover, we see what complex questions arise when the method develops, and the method has been translated over these years. Here, conditionally from the 17th to the 24th, it has been translated into almost all major languages, into all of them. German, English, Hebrew, Spanish, Chinese. In other words, a global movement has already begun. I think that this third period of development is when people from around the world, so to speak, simply accepted the method. The method has been adopted, and from the perspective of the number of certified, that is, educated people, it is already counted in the millions. I think that in about a year or maybe 2, there will be around 10 million of us, because the number of people joining the method is growing exponentially, and we are entering some kind of next stage. I would call it the fourth stage. This is a stage of such clarity and in this sense of bringing order to the great movement that was born and has been nurtured over 10 years at the cost of the labor of a large number of people. In this sense, some people's work is spontaneous, just for themselves, and it's all about trying, and whatever will be, will be. On the other hand, there are people who view it as a science and a strict discipline. I am especially grateful to such people because it is precisely the rigor of discipline, the scientific description, and the strictness of our communications that allows the method to be maintained, to create, to build a temple from this, to create an architecture from this total field which grows in a somewhat wild manner when it is transmitted with excitement. After all, many people, that is, everyone who picks up a marker for the first time, experiences that excitement, and the people who apply a sober mind, logos, ethics, and some discipline understand that a miracle occurs within the canon. These are the kinds of people that are being nurtured now. Well, we nurture them, we nurture this movement. That's how I would put it. So, as it was born, well, probably like this. Perhaps we can talk about this in another way, a bit more poetically, delving a little more into psychology and art. But that is probably a different conversation. We will share everything that is interesting.
Here is a question. There is a lot of opinion, often even from philosophy, that when something significant happens in a person's life, it is hard to deny that the creation of the neurography method is not a significant event. Have you ever analyzed and explored what directly led you to create the method, what became the catalyst for its development? Is there an event in your life or a series of events that led you to this point?
You know, I am an advocate of the idea that a person in general is a very simple being, and even a complex person is a very simple being. And the simplicity is that until the thunder strikes, the man does not cross himself. Forgive me for Proverbs on the day of baptism. In this sense, for me, any turn in my life, any turn I see as a psychologist, is that for most people who come to me, the basis for a life change, particularly for the better, is a crisis. Here is the crisis. That is when some previous period of life has already been devalued in meaning, it no longer nourishes you. You are not nourished by how you live. You are not nourished by your activities, not in the sense that it doesn't bring in money. I have always been able to earn, and thank God I earned and supported my family. I don't remember the year when I counted money for food or gasoline for the car. In this sense, talents, work ethic, endurance, and responsibility have always been present. But there is such a concept as a personal crisis, an existential crisis, when everything you do is not dear to you, does not nourish you. And this activity, when you are just earning money while the potential for knowledge has already been exhausted, here, a person, in my opinion, well, at least I am like this, I think most people are like this, reaches a dead end, and you need to somehow break free from it. And for me, this was another instance. It is also age-related, a crisis. Maybe I was 48 years old. This is one of those turning points in human history. Well, in my personal story, if I look at things systematically, when I told myself, that's it, I don't want to live like before. I don't want these offices. I don't need any fancy suits or ties. I want to live in a more essential way. This need for an essential life, this life in the vibrations of the soul. When it's honest, because by that time all needs, I would say, social ones, were satisfied. A candidate of sciences is no small feat. Well, I am a doctor now, but I understand that being a candidate of sciences is quite significant at a general level. Here there are good clients, good friends, and respect from all sides. Well, everything seems fine from all sides, but inside it's not working out. And this need to search for the soul, that is, this personal existential crisis, has led to the realization that something else is needed. But what is that something else for a person? Well, everyone has their own skills. Probably a dancer would go dance. A person who is an astronomer would likely go stargazing. I am an artist. So I started drawing. I said, that's it. There was just a point, a sufficiently courageous decision that I told myself, my family, everyone, that I would only draw, and everything else simply does not interest me. Well, it's like a crisis, but in a good sense. When you are ready to die, when you say, well, that's it, life has become dull, it's already stuffy here. Well, basically, you are dead. You live to provide for others. Your life doesn't exist. It's uninteresting. Well, that's it. Dead is dead. If you're dead, then do what you want. And I only want to draw. I started to draw. And now 2 months have passed since the moment I said that so decisively, firmly, truly. I would even say in a manly way that there could be no changes here. No one even tried to persuade me to change this decision. Everything was clear. So I turned to neurography.
And having decided to pass on the method almost immediately, they said that the first course would start just a month later. Yes, in a month we will already be training someone, the first masterclass will be there, and then the instructor course right after. It immediately formed this opinion that I need to create something for myself and then immediately pass it on to people.
Well, first of all, the instructor course was gathered in 2016, but the method was born in 2014. In this sense, it's the profession of a coach. After all, I am a coach, specifically a business coach with a very high rating, in fact, in the Russian reality. But not only in Russia, because I have also had significant work abroad. I have been working on this for many years, well, with quality and with love. I love to share with people the good things that I have. Well, I don't know. My life is built on finding these amazing things in life, the ones that surprise me. And I share my astonishment with people who are interested in it. Look at this, wow. What a thrill. It's just such a surprise. And neurography, it amazed me instantly, simply by definition. Well, I rarely define things that way. However, since then, many things have indeed surprised me by their definition. Well, for example, aesthetic coaching, analytical coaching. You see, I just learned to put my amazement into linguistic forms. Hence the books, other models. But the essence is different. I wanted to share this wow effect. Well, because you are happy when someone can share your happiness with you. But to walk when I am happy alone while everyone else is unhappy feels rather joyless. I don't know, there are probably people who find comfort in such things, but I enjoy it. A holiday is when everyone feels good. Then you have an honest celebration. Then your conscience is somehow at peace because you are happy, you are achieving something, you feel beautiful, and you have learned to handle tasks without turning to a third party. This is also important, you see, when I have been a psychologist for my whole life, basically, yes, for 30 years now. So I learned to cope with a huge number of questions related to personality changes and transpersonal issues. But they are always connected to a third party, meaning a psychologist or a colleague consultant is needed. I have many such friends in Russia whom I can call and say, listen, I need to meet with you. And no one will refuse me, just as I wouldn't refuse my colleagues. It's a kind of brotherhood in the professional environment. But here you can finally do something on your own, and in a way it's of higher quality than with another person, and somehow without words, and somehow immediately you know what a marker is. You know, anyone who plays the guitar knows this word, there is a pick. It's this object that you use to strum the strings, and the strings start to vibrate, and then suddenly you. The marker is like a mediator for the soul. You start to draw this line, and a melody begins to appear in your soul. And you can play any serenade, romance, or blues there. I can translate this into a musical form in my drawing, and I enjoy this music that resonates like the soul. Feelings resonate, the body responds, and a dance emerges in my body when I draw, just like when I listen to good music. And this is amazing because there is no need for a third party. It becomes a kind of self-effect. Finally, this practice is with oneself, for oneself. And this is true art. Moreover, it is also connected with transformation, with very deep, intimate themes. But it is also important, very important for me in neurography, that the method is integrative. Because when we try to express something in words with another person, right now, I am telling you something, but I cannot tell you everything. I won't have enough time and I don't have the words. And surely there are still words that haven't even been invented to describe something else, like the algorithm for identifying intention or something else. And in drawing, it is everything, it is whole. And this feeling of endless happiness, the touch of a holistic narrative of this initial pain, then the process of transformation, and finally the triumph of harmony in the drawing. It's always some kind of beautiful legacy. Every drawing is beautiful, regardless of what you are drawing. A calendar or some complex algorithm of the master boss, the stars. Because there are simple things and there are complex ones in neurography, but it is always such, I would say, a harmonious narrative, always music.
Pavel Mikhailovich, here is a question. An institute was created in the process of work. The institute has not only neurography schools, there are also several other schools in the institute. How did they come into your life?
Well, first of all, the institute was established 4 years before the emergence of neurography, and my movement towards the educational system began much earlier. This, on the one hand, is a completely logical action for a person who has spent their entire life in education. Sooner or later, you think about how to share your knowledge, not just fulfill orders for the corporation or coach top executives, but how to pass on your insights. Since I am not very integrated into state systems, I am generally more of a person who believes in individuality. Well, including in your own, I believe in a person more than in a system. I wanted to create an independent institute. Therefore, in 2010, the institute was registered in Switzerland. Then it was already neurography. In 2018, we registered the institute in St. Petersburg. Well, now there are a few more branches in Bulgaria and Poland. Well, there are many, yes, in Israel, and the institute was earlier. In this sense, there are things that I invented long before neurography. That is, neurography is not the only surge in my creativity. This is what I mean by creating methods. In this sense, I am probably a good methodologist because I create methods. What is a method? A method is essentially a system of principled thinking. What principles can the method be based on? In this sense, there is a method of architecture, of reality, which has become a school of neurodesign. And this is a method of social communication, thinking, pure logos, and there is also the pyramid of thinking. That is, there are such complex logical things that may be less interesting to people, those interested in something like neurography, because neurography is a musical thing. It tunes the personality, develops emotional intelligence, and nurtures beauty. It is so rich for a person that sometimes one wants to forget about intellect. And the school of neurodesign is quite the opposite. It is no less musical, but it is music when the brain plays. On these same 7 levels, with these same 7 notes, just as neurography does with 7 colors. And you think in words, revealing philosophy. It's just completely different. It's like comparing Tchaikovsky and Schnittke. Just different music, different composers, and the same goes for a different school. And then, when it was born, later on, after neurography had already emerged, the theory of metamodernism was born, which helped to systematically look at one's activities as well. And so the method of paradigmatic analysis was born, God willing. And in general, I started to include metamodernism around 2018. I was one of probably the very first people to start applying the word metamodern in theory and practice in the Russian language. Thus, the theory of metamodernism was born, a method of paradigmatic analysis, which allowed for the establishment of criteria applicable to itself. And so this division into 4 parts, into 4 stages of the development of reality, into 4 components of which the world consists. He also posed a question to himself. I have a question before me, because if I have a theory, I must adhere to it. This is authenticity. It is essential. That is, if I am a neurography instructor, I should draw for myself, and generally draw a lot. Whatever I do, especially when I tell other people that they need to align their practice with this. And then I had a systematic understanding of how to complete the institute. And now the institute consists of 4 schools, which are dedicated, so to speak, to 4 structures of personality. Structures, it's not just about personality anymore, but about the structures of human development. That is, there is a school of the body. This is a school of neurobiotics. It's all about biology, about the body. After all, I think that for another couple of years, I will be focusing on this the most. Well, for some reasons, if you want, I will tell you. The second school is, in fact, the school of neurography. This is precisely about a person, about personality, about emotions, about personal growth, about personal scale, about various qualities. The third school is the school of neurodesign. It is the smartest, kind of the most, well, I say kind of, not as a filler, not for simplification. It is a rather complex school, but my drive is to make complex things simple. Therefore, those who take on the study of the pyramid of thinking are suddenly surprised that one can think so simply and effectively. What in general puts me, in the framework with people who exploit others' attention through complexity. And my story in general, everything we do is to tell people that actually it's all simple. Not just simple, 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 but it's all simple. And in this simplicity, there is logic. It's just that this logic is not the same logic that I don't know, Mr. Immanuel Kant or someone else applies when forming their logical connections. Well, there is the structure. And the 4th school is neurodynamics, which is the school, so to speak, of the spirit. That is, the 3rd school is the school of thinking, which is neurodesign. And the 4th school is the school of the soul, the school of neurodynamics, meditative practice, and flow states. I think there will also be very significant development there because bionics and dynamics are connected in phenomenology, that is, in our very existence. If neurography and neurodesign can be divided as methodologies into fragmented algorithms or components, then bionics, well, our life cannot be divided. You cannot divide the body into parts and say that this is a person. A person is when the whole body is together. And the same goes for our life, existence, and dynamics. They are not considered separately from us. People who try to consider life separately from a specific individual create yet another set of theories that, in general, are a subject of design thinking but are in no way connected to life here. And I think that the 4th school will still provide this perspective for human development. And this is also quite interesting. I ask myself the question of what I will be doing, what we will be doing in 10, 15 years. Where will our avant-garde nature be? We are currently the first in many things. We are unique, but we want to maintain this not because we were once the first, but because we remain the first in our research. And these studies of human capabilities, mental capabilities, and energetic capabilities of a person, this is a completely blue ocean. And there, what some people are doing before us, there are pioneers in these fields. Well, they are, firstly, somewhat devoted to certain persecutions. There is parapsychology. And however they refer to these wonderful people, but in reality, this is a whole area of subtle energy, of higher mental abilities to turn a blind eye to it. Well, I can't. It's dishonest. And people find this interesting. It's like applying this, surplus of positive energy, where to put it. That's the question. If you become happy, what do you do with the excess positive energy? They will tell you, well, earn money, give money to someone. Well, that's kind of a banal question. It's somewhat related to the field of social design, which I understand. Well, fine, we will create 10, 20, 30 social projects, but where will we put the happiness afterwards? And this is where to invest your positive energy in order to surpass the boundaries of your own human limitations, to merge with the spirit, to exist in the subtle realms. This is an incredibly fascinating area. And our institute is good in this sense because we are not dependent on anyone. We do not need permission from higher authorities, ministries, or anything else. We just keep working and working. If people are interested, they respond positively to it. And if they are not interested, well, we do it for ourselves then. And that's fine too. In this sense, we maintain the freedom and independence of researchers, which is important for science. This is because if science is departmental, you are confined within the framework of the department instead of science's meaning.
At the Institute, in addition to direct educational projects, there are actually many areas such as neuroart, for example, which include open events and social life. The Institute actively participates in social life. So is this a logical continuation of this scientific activity that captivates?
Well, it's not exactly the same thing. Scientific activity is just one form. We say everything in fours, and there at the Institute there are 4 forms of activity. One of them is the laboratory, where we come up with ideas. That is, I sit down, brainstorm with you, discuss things with other people, and we invent devices that have no analogs in the world. It's strange to repeat this every time, right? There are no analogs in the world. Well, there are just none at all. These are unique things. There simply aren't any, and we are coming up with ideas. The laboratory is working. The second thing is education itself. It is the development of programs and the transmission of knowledge. The educational component is the second type of activity. The third type of activity is, in fact, science. It is about how to affirm, solidify, and connect this with the knowledge that people have developed, because we are not an esoteric system. Esoterics are people who create their own system of describing the world. And this system of describing the world can sometimes be very good, self-sufficient, but it is not connected to the surrounding world at all. It is like a closed sect. We are not esoteric at all. The essence of science is to be not esoteric, but an open system. That is, we can always show how this corresponds to different psychological schools and philosophical directions, and that it is part of the overall world. And the fourth direction of our activities is, in fact, social projects. Why? Because the Institute is a social unit. It is not Pavel Piskarev's office and not my art studio. This is an institute, and the Institute has a task. If we teach other people how to live well and how to build a society, then we ourselves must correspond. Therefore, all our social projects are increasing, and next year there will be even more of them. I understand that there will be many of them even more. Right now, I don't even know if it's worth describing them yet, but several have already been approached for description on the website. This is simply a testament to our adequacy. In general, the Institute is a testament to our adequacy. Actually, what matters is that me and my team, that is our team, are reasonable, that we are normal, that we are understandable, that we are integrated into the system of society, that we are not just safe, but moreover, we are useful. This is important because in reality, there are many people around us who speak very convincingly about something. In the world of this informational chaos, I personally keep searching for evidence that people are sane. Well, just reasonable, because there have been a lot of unreasonable people in recent years. Well, it has grown exponentially, yes. One can understand human neurosis, social neurosis, but we want to preserve ourselves, and even more so to protect people, friends, especially those who trust us. I don't want to let them down, that's true. But it's such a normal human, masculine, professional responsibility for those people who said yes to you here. And art is a bit further away. I think art, in the literal sense, does not relate to the institution at all. Another thing is that we have what could be called an art school. And it is still developing. It has not yet become the kind of school that I can say is complete. Because I am only gathering there because the concept of art, in my opinion, is not conveyed at all. And I currently have a certain cycle of lectures, meetings, and reflections going on there. My philosophical part in this cauldron is precisely what fuels and breathes into it. which is how to formulate and convey everything, how to tell the story of art. We are also talking about the fact that we are, in a way, the discoverers of an era. And the very word era can sound like this. Well, okay, what different words people say tomorrow, they will say something else. But no, we understand that we are opening an era that will shape the life of the planet and humanity for millennia. Well, let's at least talk about centuries. This is to preserve those who are listening to us. Although based on our foundations, what we are discussing, the era of metamodernism, that is what will be happening there for millennia. They will say, well, crazy men, they are thinking in millennia again. But excuse me, what a scale, what an effect. That's it. And in this sense, it all makes sense, is coherent, and is intriguing. And this, among other things, gives people, light and hope for the future. Because in this world of cataclysms that are happening everywhere, in the economy, in politics, in anthropology, everywhere, here. But if you don't have a ray of hope, then you need to focus and die young. If you have no hope, then why bring children into the world? Why go to work if you have no hope? And for hope to exist, it shouldn't just be nurtured by thinking that everything is bad, while I just somehow wait for a truffle or a spark to ignite. One must believe in something. And I don't know, the theory of metamodernism in paradigmatic analysis, in my opinion, is again unique, the only one in the world. As far as I know, the theory that everything is actually moving towards the better. What is happening now is, in general, a systemic, I would say, the final concluding crisis of the evolution of human society. That's it. So there is strength, that's why there is strength. Because I personally am not what you would call a convinced person. That is, I am not fanatically convinced. Our logic, look, it is already written in books, it is written in articles, it works in scientific papers, it works everywhere. Our logic works, unlike the logic of other people. Well, or those I have heard, who are mainly concerned with who can prove their point better, who can build a better system of evidence for why everything is so bad, or who is right. But for us, it's not really about who is right or wrong. We simply talk about how it will be, because this system of the theory of paradigmatic analysis is a meta-model. Well, you say it from here.
To put it briefly, it's always very interesting to communicate with you for one simple reason, personally for me, that when a question is forming in my mind, I think, now I will ask Pavel Mikhailovich a question about this, and you, in the process of developing the previous question, are already answering the subsequent one. This is what metamodernism is, field properties. Why should you strain yourself, my friend?
And articulate my question if I have already read it.
And still, to conclude our meeting today, I cannot help but ask a question that probably comes up very often, and you are surely asked it frequently as well. But for the sake of our entire audience, what is your personal vision, perhaps not of such broad perspectives, but of the prospects for the next 5 years, the prospects for the Institute, and the prospects for the development of the method? And probably, very often, you are also asked about your personal prospects, about your inner feelings. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Well, I have significantly rejuvenated after 5 years. So there are still a couple of years of such intense, I would say, aging. According to a certain model that we are studying, it is not just some internal intuition. Rather, there is a period of completion of the first circle of life that lasts until the age of 60, and in this sense, I am currently experiencing a personal, physiological, and age-related crisis. It takes a lot of effort to wake up from this point every day. Well, I simply have experience, inertia, will, knowledge, and the assumption that it won't always be this way. And then a period will begin, like a second rise, a second youth after 60. In this sense, I understand that in 5 years I will feel better than I do now. And that's why the practices that I am currently engaged in are more about preparing me for the future rather than just trying to keep me alive in some way. In other words, I am preparing to be young. I also advise others who are approaching these milestones to do the same. I personally think that right after turning 60, I will actively engage in the project of active longevity. Why? Because I will already have the right to this first completed circle of life. I can already speak about a certain complete cycle, and then everything else is somewhat of a repetition. And I want to communicate, well, obviously, with my peers, because we have a kind of shared cultural baggage, peers, I mean, plus or minus 10 years. maybe 15. Well, it's interesting to some, of course, but these are people who are already in the second half of their lives. People who are more about meanings than about content, more about quality than about quantity, where they are trying to stuff something into their barns. I am not against wealth at all. I am all for it. But there are things that are more important which become clearer in this second half of life because everything else becomes unimportant. And I have a perspective on art, great travels, spiritual practice, monasteries, and university departments. I understand that the method will reach, let's say, 100 million people in 5 years. Well, it's even interesting to check, to put a mark and ask if we will reach 100 million people. And notice, if 100 million people are already drawing on the planet, it will be a global movement. 100 million people, that is the population of a country, such a respectable country, if we are already managing to have, so to speak, our own people. Maybe a nation of 100 million people, right? And in 5 years, 100 million people, if we have 5 now, is possible. Possible. I say this quite boldly as if it is not impossible. On the contrary, am I underestimating the figure? You know, what else? It seems to me that there will be significant recognition from public and governmental institutions. Well, that is that neurography will be integrated into the educational system, into schools. Many drawing teachers are completely out of work. Drawing teachers, meaning people with a pedagogical education who can draw and teach, just need to take up neurography and introduce it into schools. If in 5 years we succeed, then the state, I hope, will be Russia, which will introduce neurography into the educational system of secondary schools, but will simply make a leap. Therefore, I see that I have no pessimistic forecasts regarding the system of life where our existence, the Russian existence, is concerned. There are no pessimistic forecasts regarding the state of the Russian world, but also because neurography will indeed save the world. I have somewhat more modest predictions regarding neurodesign. I have a feeling that the world needs intelligence less and less. You know, it's as if this era of enlightenment has ended in failure. Well, to put it soberly, these complex logical systems are generally not needed by anyone. But I think that even what we offer in our laboratories, like the pyramid of thinking, will likely be some charged software that can provide systematic answers. That will be interesting. Well, I think that we will find contact with artificial intelligence, which in general is not scary at all. It's frightening when the hands don't work, when the fingers have stopped moving. That's why the marker, including neurography, brings everything to life more than anything else. It revitalizes a person. After all, the urban individual, it seems to me, is becoming extinct due to the lack of manual labor. Humans evolved from the Paleolithic era through manual labor and began to degrade in the 20th century due to the lack of manual labor. I think that we will help a person who wishes to regain their human image and continue to develop something like that.
Thank you very much, Pavel Mikhailovich. Friends, thank you to everyone who was with us today. Thank you so much. Mikhailovich, for the answers. So shall we work for 100 million people?
We will work. In any case, honestly, we will work regardless of millions of people. That is the truth. Because things go well when you are ready to do them regardless of the results. And this is the service to science, the service to art, the service to society. The word service is very good. It removes all these doubts about whether to go to work or not. You wake up and serve the world, and that's it.
The goal is beautiful. 100 million, I like this number.
A good number, yes. Friends, I wish everyone 100 million.
Thank you very much. Wishing everyone happiness and success.
All the best. Thank you.